And we're back after a wonderful, eventful weekend. We're so happy. I've never been so happy to hear that someone is going to take an ice bath.
Yeah.
Don't think about that one too hard. Welcome to Underdog, everybody.
Well, I got to be honest. What I thought of immediately was I was at Lake Superior over the weekend, and it was very cold.
It was a nice
like an ice bath. It was. So when you said that, I was like, I just did that, and it was horrible. It was so bad. People have got some rough times ahead of them jumping in ice baths.
Yeah, Dash, we're sorry, man, but that's what's got to happen.
Yep.
We're here to do 100 Talk, of course, our LCS coverage of 100 Thieves. And I'm Cole, and that's Jordan. We are powered by the wonderful drink known as Rip It Energy Fuel. This is a Citrus X, my favorite flavor, celebrating one of my favorite LCS wins of all time.
A classic.
And
classic win.
Our lighting and capture is provided by Elgato as well, so thank you to them. Jordan, I have been enjoying recently the light strip.
Ooh.
I got one of these during the Elgato Prime sale, which was like the day before my birthday. Perfect. So I was like, I'll gift myself an RGB strip because I like generally not super interested in them. Yeah. But I was like, it's Elgato. I love them. Plus, it'd be nice to have like an extra like strip light of white. Like I don't do colors, but I like, white in places. It's like, what the heck? I'll try it. Happy birthday to me. And I did. Yeah. And I'm actually converted. So
Are you using it for any RGBs? That's the true conversion. If they can get you to turn your stream setup into a disco show.
No, still doing just the whites right now. But okay. I still am enjoying it a lot. It's still vibey.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
That even if you don't want a disco in your computer setup, you can use it for white. Cool. Just use the nice, soft, gentle.
Back in the white zone.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it. You didn't want to say it?
All right, let's talk LCS, Jordan. How about we do that instead of whatever?
Quickly, go. Hurry. Let's move to LCS.
Hold on, I somehow have slipped your camera out of alignment. So let me fix that before we talk about that. Okay. So, we're going to go back to like talking about the games for a bit. And I think like I'm going to have to resist the urge in this pod to not do too much of quote addressing the haters.
Yeah, we've moved on from that.
Have we? We haven't really. Which is why I'm saying I'm going to have to resist the temptation. But it's going to be a topic because that's a lot of the chatter around the org. Sorry, I was just thinking about earlier. And so we'll do that. We'll talk about some general things and we'll set the stage for what should be an interesting episode of The Dive coming up, as well as what promises to be a very unpredictable LCS weekend. So cannot wait.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. TSM. I guess we got to start with that. TSM.
Yeah, let's start there.
Do you have any sense of like, well, maybe they're gonna like get their act together?
No,
you don't.
I have zero sense.
And you didn't go into the game?
No, not really. I mean, let me just ask a general question of you. If you just look at their roster, does this look like a top 3 roster to you? Take the nameplates of organization off the roster.
True. No, it does not.
It doesn't. And so what is it about TSM lately that has inspired this great confidence in people? Is it their management? Is it their coaching? Like, why are we assuming that this team will suddenly become better than the players who are on it? Like, it takes something special to accomplish that, not just like, I don't know, just TSM, man. They're probably going to be great.
Yeah, it's like the one thing is the background noise, it's like clearly the org is not in a good place, and it's probably pretty hard as a player to thrive in an environment like that. I gotta admit though, some part of me is like, how it usually like clicks for a little bit when it's brand new.
Oh, that's true.
I think they won their second game right together as a roster, but
kill. Yeah,
I was like, maybe that's gonna happen. Maybe we're gonna like have a trap game or whatever. So
sure.
Always, and maybe it's just my paranoid nature as a 100 Thieves fan now, because I always feel like, okay, I don't really know what's going to happen. but a little bit of nervousness, just the tiniest shade, but largely comfortable.
And look, I think that the roster they've got could be good with time, but I think it's a very unrealistic and unfair expectation to say that suddenly they're going to vault to top 3 type of performance, and that's where we're at, and that's the matchup we had this weekend.
But granted,
that's why.
Yes, but granted, like, imagine feeling that trepidation and then firing up the LCS stream on Saturday.
Yes.
And seeing us draft Tom Kench.
Oh. Yeah, you're by the way, for anybody who's not following 100 Top 5, I do this. I enjoy this greatly after a game. I'll go through and look at your tweets and replies if you've been able to watch it live. It's just like it's a voyage through the psyche of a shattered man, you know. Like you start off just devastated. I can sense the devastation. Of course I watched the game first, so I don't spoil it by reading your tweets. But yeah, I can understand where you're coming from, Cole. It has not been, and actually I thought it was very interesting on the cast there. I think it was Freak who maybe said this is who he's most played. And look, this is not like shade at Freak for getting that factoid wrong, but it like when he said that, I had a physical reaction. I was like, oh, most played Tom Kench, yuck. But he's played it a lot. He has played it a lot. There's a third. I think it's the most.
Most played because he's played it twice, which is the most he's played any champion.
I feel like
technically
he zoomed out to career, right?
Oh, did they? I don't remember that part of it because I was so dismayed by the pick that I was just focused on my reaction to it. But this split, he's played Nami, TK, and Renata twice each, and everything else he's only played once. But look, I'm just saying. I watched us ban Talia, who I was like, we need to be playing Talia.
Yeah.
And I watched us draft Tom Kench.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
And not just draft Tom Kench, but draft Tom Kench in the first round of picks. So anyway, I had a sinking feeling. I just had this like, I don't feel super good about this. It finally worked. The TK finally worked.
Yes. Yeah.
This was the first time I felt like, it worked. Past splits when he's played it, I think we even won a game or two with him playing it.
Yeah.
And this is all like since the rework, right? Even when we went, I'd never liked the pick. Never liked it. And then this was the game where things were different.
Yeah.
Huhi Tom Kench was solid. And even more importantly, FBI had ultra confidence in this game. Maybe because of the safety the pick provides, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And FBI being back was like the singular story of this game for me.
Absolutely.
I was so happy to see the aggression out of him.
Yeah. I think the moment I realized that it's a new week in the LCS was he gale forced forward under turret. He played Aphelios, lane Aphelios, mind you, not mid to late game Aphelios, lane Aphelios like an absolute bully because he had the TK there to escort him to safety after he, just absolutely besmirched the bot lane. It was a delightful thing to see.
Yeah.
Man, it looked good. He like the aggression is just, it's so weird because we've spent a lot of this split talking about, we got the I almost called it reliability patch. Maybe they need that
Definitely
too for the client. The durability, right? So we get the durability, we got the TP changes, like all these things that are making him less aggressive in lane. And it's as if he just suddenly woke up this week and decided, you know what, I'm actually going to just play as aggro as I'd like to.
Yeah.
And it worked.
It did. And it worked to the tune of, I think, 6 kills for him. Let me check that. Yes, 6-0-4, and finished about 50 CS ahead of the Jinx, which is always a very good feeling. And so much of this split up to this point has been like, what's going to happen with Abbedagge?
Yep.
And, can he be more consistent? Is he going to keep playing like this lane monster that emerged over the past couple of weeks? We talked about all this stuff. And was it the end of the last podcast where I was like, will we ever talk about FBI again?
Yeah, actually it was. Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
We talked about him first because he just, him being back to looking like himself, like that is like the final piece of the puzzle, feels like to me.
Yeah.
Now, and I don't want to like lead into a conversation I'll have later, but at the same time, I get it. This was week 5. So we've still got some work to do. And I'm not saying like this is, Exodia is formed or whatever, but this is a very positive sign for us. It's like, it feels like the final piece of the puzzle is starting to come into place.
Yeah. All of the things that we know can hit independently, and over the course of the split have hit at different times. This weekend was all cylinders firing. We looked darn good.
And we didn't have to resort to old tricks either. That was what was promising. So, and I guess maybe we can talk about this quickly as like a way to wrap up the TSM thing, as just to get that game out of the way, because it wasn't close. It was a quick game. We stomped. Everybody looked good. Abbedagge played Lissandra. I don't know. We didn't have the Poppy. We played into blue side Poppy.
Yeah.
And still like it was not a problem at all. But we didn't go to old tricks. We took out an early game lead. We built it and snowballed it. That is not what we typically have done this split, Yeah. And so when things are just functioning in that way, the team looks different.
Yeah, and this is honestly, so this is Closer and Abbedagge with 1 kill between the two of them, 15 assists between the two of them. Like, these are not the typical recipe for success for summer 2022 Thieves, right? I love to see us winning games in new ways. And this felt like one of those. I think, honestly, the new tech here was, Tom Kench can be a good champ, turns out. We finally unlocked that. We ought to give credit, Cole, as two of the biggest haters in the Tom Kench club, to them for sticking with this and continuing to try to find ways to make it work for us. I mean, it's kind of like, hey, Aphelios, we've seen FBI, great champ in the team fights later in the game. Also, it turns out, if you can get him ahead early, even better. Even better. If you can win the lane with Aphelios, it becomes much easier. And it's not just like a slow, steady scale and simmer. It's the explosive, I've got some kills, I'm up 50 CS, then you don't really get to play against him too much.
No.
And then fun fact, I look at the if you type LCS results in Google, they have a little widget. And
that's right.
It's they could use a reliability patch. But the funny thing,
what a callback! What a callback!
That's a tech term. The funny thing is they only list 4 TSM players in this game. The official Google results for this game only lists 4 players, and it kind of felt that way. It kind of felt like they were playing down.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta see this. Hold on. Sorry, this stall.
Not to cast any shade.
You are not joking. Oh my goodness.
It's disrespectful. The algorithm did him wrong.
No way. Chime does not appear on the list.
I know. It's rough for Chime.
Oh my gosh.
I think Chime is a good player. Google lost track of him.
Oh my gosh. That is so good.
Hey,
poor Chime.
By the way, you mentioned early game. Like, this feels somehow like a callback. And again, I'm not exactly sure how we did it, because there has not, I guess, somebody smarter than us might point to a change in the most recent patch to say, well, this is why maybe it's happening. But typically you don't see a huge shift in the way a team plays from, point patch to point patch, right? Like, it's not a mid-season patch. It's not an off-season, preseason patch. It's just, they changed some champs, and it's that much more of a favorable meta for us. I like the thought of that.
Yeah.
Especially as you think about every patch they do now is getting closer to the Worlds patch. And I'm starting to see some things. I'm not super up to speed, but I believe they're going to start toning down the degree of change in each patch. It's really more about refining things now. So if it's true that this is just a great patch for us from a playstyle perspective, that bodes even better when it comes to playoffs, when it comes to potentially going to Worlds.
It would seem so. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but it would seem so.
Not get ahead. But I like when it feels like we're settled into a nice meta.
Right.
And I think some of the like, hey, Corki is out of the meta. I think that actually does bode well for us. I don't think that's, and Abbedagge has been looking real good. So I think that's good.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all I want to say about TSM. But I will parlay, the end of that conversation into the beginning of this one, because this one got off to a good start for us, and that we did the same exact thing. It was a snowball smash, only this time we weren't playing tied for 8th place TSM. We were playing the somehow perceived as immortal and impenetrable evil geniuses. Mm-hmm. Let's back up a second though.
Sure.
On Saturday, actually, let's back up even farther. A week ago on Monday,
the year
when we
is
did the
2005.
League of Legends way back. Still is just a mere idea in Trindamir's head. No, so a week ago on the podcast, we made predictions, and listeners may remember that I predicted a loss to Evil Geniuses.
As did I.
Now, on Saturday, before the game started, so we played Evil Geniuses on Sunday. So before we even played TSM, I was like, something in the air feels different right now. And I was just listening to conversation around EG, and I was thinking about one of the time-honored principles that I always talk about on the podcast, which is, it is hard to be very good for a long time. And I just felt it in my bones that things were just going to be different. So I tweeted out, it's going to feel so good to thunderclap EG tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know why things were different. Now, after I saw the TSM game, I felt a lot more confident in what I had just said.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can't put my finger on what felt different. Sometimes there's just like this, like, all right, the winds of change are blowing.
Yes.
Like it felt that way for us when we won our first title, right? Like going into that, we started to feel really good, and we were peaking at the right time. And it was just like, if we're playing like this, who is going to touch us, right? Like something just felt different. And that, like, I don't know what that is. I think like it's a combination of me being frustrated with the conversation around 100 Thieves or lack thereof. Not to harp on that too much, because there's one 100 talker in particular who has been very persistent in telling me to not complain about things like that.
Yeah.
He's right. And there he is in chat right at the time.
In chat. His Google alert was pinging. Yeah,
but I think it was a combination of that and just like remembering that what we've done over the past 2 splits. And it was a big game, and it was time to show up. And we did. When we got to the Abbedagge quadra kill.
Yeah, that's a good moment.
Which is an insane moment. Remember, he gets what may be the only Renata revive I've seen in the LCS.
There've been a handful.
Sure, but I haven't seen them. We certainly haven't had them. We got to that point, and I was just like, yeah, this is going to be like the Team Liquid finals from 2021. Like, this is just going to be a stomp, and I'm just going to like sit back and do this, because this probably is also just part of my 100 Thieves DNA. But when I see fights like that, it just reminds me of G2. Do you remember the G2 where it's like they pull out those fights that look like they're going to lose them and they have no business winning them?
Yeah.
And yet it just goes their way, and that's just kind of what the like Riot gods are thinking.
Yep.
That was us. That was us this week after that quadra kill.
Yeah.
What about you? How are you feeling about the atmosphere of this game?
Well, I gotta say, so the atmosphere of this game was unique because we had Bwipo on the TriCast, which I think is both fascinating and delightful and absolutely confounding. Like he is an active player in the hunt for the top of the league. So it's just like I loved it. I thought he did an awesome job. But it seems strange to me that they've enlisted him to also just sort of talk about other teams. You know, the amount of insight from him was astonishing.
He had the Tony Romo heat check, right?
Like everybody else is on notice basically because he's gonna have a job when he decides he doesn't want to play for a living anymore. But I just felt like every time he opened his mouth, I was like, I'm learning a lot here. I'm learning a lot. And I thought I knew some things about this game. I don't know anything about this game. This is great.
You know how much I want to hate anything coming out of EU, right? So I am predisposed to not like what he's doing and be like, dude, and he's on Team Liquid. It's like, get off my broadcast. That dude was the most likable guy and so freaking insightful during the whole I was amazed. Like, and I know he has a reputation for that, like over in LEC and everything. You know, he's got like past experience or whatever. But dang, that was really good. So yeah, just a side note on Bwipo. I tweeted they better have the Tom Brady bag promised to him where he has the deal before he's even done playing, you know?
Yeah, honestly. You gotta make sure he's enjoying his time in LA and that he's not thinking about going back to the LEC to do broadcast work because LCS needs him. So all of that aside, I mean, I do feel like that kind of it made the game feel special, right? It was cool. It felt like game of the week.
That's a good point.
Like And I thought it started with him talking about the team comp, right? And he said, I think I like 100 Thieves draft here. I think they've got it. There's just so much scaling and so much damage. And that is really how it felt. And it was a very different, to go back to what you said for the last game. It was a very different feeling kind of comp for us. Like, and it's interesting because I feel like sometimes we've tried drafts that have just absolutely failed, fallen completely flat, that are different. Like I think about the game that we played where we did nothing. I can't even remember. It was so forgettable. I can't even remember what the draft was.
Oh yeah, where we were just like backing on dragons and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like
I think that was was that 2 weeks ago?
It was like last week, but it was a failure game. But it was my point is it was so forgettable that I've actually forgotten because it just didn't feel like us. So this was an awesome game because it felt like we have found a new way to play to strengths, and some of it's with new tech, right? Like I noticed the Renata pick, obviously, meta, very good. I think Kuhi looked great on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna start pointing out when I say I feel like Kuhi looked great on it because I know that he is the point of the team that is most commonly looked at as, consider for, some kind of change, whether it's Busio or somebody.
If you're to make a change, yeah, right.
I am continually impressed by Hui. I see no burning platform here to make a change. Games like this are making a big case for him. But the amount of clutch, buyback, forced takeover, whatever.
Yeah, the ult.
Final stand. Not the ult, the final stand.
The W, the revive.
Yeah, his chat will hit me up. But he hit those just on time. It must have just been on cooldown. But the thing that I want to point out, yes, it's a cool ability. Bailout. Thank you, chat. Love you guys. Bailout makes more sense than mine. The thing that's really cool about it is, and Cast mentioned this quickly, kind of in passing. Look, even if you don't get the full revive on it, which is a good thing to do, you like that outcome. There was one fight where it's kind of like a stopwatch that you can cast abilities through, right? Like it prevents you from dying. And I know that you can speed it up. It's not actually, I understand, Chad, it's not actually a stopwatch, but it bought Abbedagge like another second to just do so much damage
Right.
on this Azir, it's like you basically okay. Stating the obvious now, he was a Scion, but Azir, and that's just typically Scion is not a huge broken problem because he's got limited range, but when you're Azir and you're a zombie, it turns out you can nearly kill at least one person, maybe more, no matter what.
Right.
So this game felt to me, you asked the feeling, it just felt like an inevitability. Like somebody on this team is going to completely explode you, and you can try to kill one of them, and maybe you will. They got kills in this game. They left with 7. But it never felt like we were at the point where we were not capable of acing them in any given fight, which I loved. That's a great look for us. I thought it worked really well. And this is the kind of thing where some weeks you try these and I forget about it by the next week. And other weeks I think about it fondly, randomly throughout the day, right? Like it just keeps coming back to me.
Jordan's just sitting at his desk working and takes a sip of his coffee and just smiles. It's like,
that was a good fight. Yeah, that was good. I did like that one. So yeah,
I should do the proprietary.
Product placement. I don't have mine. It's full of old rip it. Anyhow, you don't need to know about my dishwashing habits. This is a good game. I liked it. We beat a really good team, and I don't want to get ahead of us. But the last time we beat a team that was unbeatable, they had to swap their top laner. I don't know. I would be a little worried if I was EG now, and I think maybe there's some things here that other people can pick up on.
We're gonna talk about that very soon. Let's first, actually, maybe you and I have different ideas about who that is. But can we talk about the Abbedagge portion?
Yes.
We sung the praises of which is great because we need to do that more often. Abbedagge. Hopefully, this is the last time I really talk about this. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
But since he has been called out by High during that interview in that very awkward moment, dude has absolutely beasted lanes.
Yeah.
Even if he's not like slamming them, like when he was against Bjergsen, right? They were both up to like 12 CS a minute, like in lane. And it's like usually when Bjergsen does that, he's crushing, right? But Abbedagge was right there with him, keeping the pace, right? He's been farming like crazy, and he has the highest first blood percentage of any mid laner by like a lot. Like it's not close. He has like twice as many. But at the same time, tell me if you think I'm wrong saying that. It doesn't feel like he does much like killing of the opponent like by himself, like solo kills or like just making the lane unplayable for someone. It doesn't seem like he does that often. He did that to JoJo.
Oh.
On a level that was just insane, right?
Yep.
He and let me say this also. I think usually the way we play, we don't need him to be doing that. And right. He's been fine. He's been totally good. But JoJo, again, got thunderclapped in that lane.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Thank the heavens above for JoJo that his interview segment that they played right before the game was not his usual, no, I'm so much better than everybody in the world, man. I'm just going to destroy him. Right?
Yeah.
Which I say it like I have like a huge problem with it. I don't actually have a big problem with that. It may get annoying at times, and it's pretty like that's not how I would go about it, you know? But it's like you want your player to have the dog, right? You want him to think that. Maybe you don't want him to say it all the time, but you want him to at least think that. So whatever, that is what it is. I'm not, casting aspersions on him. But yeah, he actually was super respectful of Abbedagge in that pre-game segment, which was surprising. And Abbedagge repaid that kindness by making him look like a child. It was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is against, JoJo's obviously he's been one of the top mids in the league.
Yeah.
He's been very, very good. I've begrudgingly had to admit that.
He's earned your respect.
This was, he definitely earned my respect. This was a different game for the man. All right.
I think it actually
was like
adds
50 CS behind by the time they got out of that lane.
Look, it's because every wave he had to back with 6 HP. Like every time he tried to farm the lane, I'm exaggerating. It's probably every other wave, but he was behind, and Abbedagge was punishing. Which I think that's what we like to see. I think he's had other games where he's farmed really well. He's paced the other mid laner really well. He's paced some of the other, he's paced the top tier mid laners really well. But I agree with you. This is the first time where it feels like, since he had that conversation with High. We got to send High a thank you card, by the way. Clearly, that interview worked.
Yes, thank you, High.
That was a pro to pro.
For the pro to pro, asking the awkward question. Thank you.
He should have. The only thing missing was the couch. Like sit on. So tell me about everyone says you're garbage and you're not any good.
Everyone's been very critical of you, saying you're a very bad laner.
He's like, oh, guess
okay,
we'll beat them then. All right. But yeah, one thing about JoJo, I actually think it adds. So I like when people have swagger, so long as they can back it up. And I think when somebody calls out that another player is good, and then they have a hard time playing against them, I think it actually adds a lot of credibility to the general swag and trash talk. When it's not just like, it's not full bravado, right?
Right.
I'll beat everybody. It doesn't matter. Give me 2 lane opponents. I think that, one, credit to JoJo. 2, I think this legitimizes Abbedagge as an actual, mid laner of note or concern, depending on which team you're on, in the LCS. Which we got to say, that's a pretty drastic turnaround from like 4 weeks ago.
Yeah,
where people were saying like
he needs to go.
Is the most washed mid laner in the history of the league. I don't know what they were saying. But yeah, what a comeback for him.
Yeah,
feels so good to see him have these 2 games this weekend.
Yeah. Interesting point from chat. It's like, maybe Abbedagge has been like ripping scrims lately. So JoJo's changing his tune in the interview or whatever.
True.
That may be true also. But it was that was a landmark moment for the split, was that question from High, and Abbedagge was like, I don't care. I'm gonna be he was like, I don't care what people think. And now he's proving it. So that's
Abbedagge.
Yeah.
We got to take at least a moment here to reflect on, it was like the first good week that Abbedagge had we'll call it post high, pre-high, post high. Makes it sound like he smokes marijuana before he plays or something. He's but yeah, high player. We said if he can consistently play at this level, we are going to be a very hard team to beat. And it would appear that was an accurate bit of analysis from us. We don't typically do that. We don't typically offer insight or analysis that actually plays out in a way. But I mean, I think it's worth remembering that the other parts of our team have been really strong. And I think one of the challenges is just we got to sync them all up and get them working well together. And I think this is us doing that, basically.
And isn't it interesting the way they did it in this game? Because like not to go back and talk about the draft a bunch, but it's like the pieces that were played were all pieces we've seen in some shape or form, and they were just like rearranged into new groupings and like new strats and everything in just the right way, right? Didn't it feel like, all right, we got a someday GP. Like we know what that can be. We know how good he is at the barrel mini game, right? We've got Closer Viego, which is one of the proven contender picks from him. Abbedagge on Azir. And Zeri for FBI, which the first time or two, it wasn't super great, but he grew into it. And like, that's the kind of pick where, if you are having a good game, you're going to be the most annoying team fighter in the world, right? And then Huhi Renata, which we all feel good about. And that they arranged those pieces in just the right way. And then you look at the draft on the other side, and honestly, to me, it feels like a very right now comp from EG.
Yeah. Right.
Gnar has been like, they've talked about that all the time as like the highest presence pick. Poppy jungle, which is like seems to be the strongest jungle pick right now.
Yeah.
Ari mid, which maybe isn't like as on the edge as it was like, at the beginning of the split or whatever, but still very common, viable, and now. And Kaisa, which is like an emerging power pick, right? Especially from other regions. And Nautilus, which is pretty, steadfast presence, right? In pro play. It just felt like, look, like we figured it out in our way, arranged those pieces, and still were able to defeat something that's maybe more of like a current or fresher draft, right? And I don't know, coming out of draft, I still felt like good. Usually I have like I don't know,
Yeah.
but I felt good. So the way we've done things as of late has been really like positive for me, because it's one thing to be like, hey, we're a team who's going to experiment and try picks, and it's one thing to say that when you lose games. It's another to do that and then like take the results from those experiments and implement them. That is different. That is different. And teams don't always do both pieces of that equation, but we did.
Yeah. I feel like I've seen people in our Discord and on Twitter and in chat talk about how it does feel like we are a team that does a good job of recognizing the format, not over chasing, wins at all costs, trying things in the middle of the split when we're feeling secure, identifying the things that work really well, e.g. draft, throwing out the things that don't. Like I do feel like we have a more cohesive way of using the best of ones, the season format, just kind of try different stuff. And this for sure feels like a template of a draft that could easily become a strategy that we could use when we get to the best of phase of the season, right?
Yeah.
But to do that, you have to not panic every time you lose a game.
Yeah, which we talked about last week too. Yeah.
That's hard for a lot of people. It's hard for a lot of organizations, honestly, who are chasing this vision of we have to be competing at the highest level at all times. So I think that positions us well too from a strategy coaching, building toward a point perspective.
Yeah, I want to point out one other apparent strat / coaching thing that I noticed going on this weekend. And if I look back, like maybe we've been doing this. I honestly don't know off the top of my head, but it was something I paid attention to this week because of EG, right? EG is the team that gets objective bounties against us.
Yeah.
We and kudos, by the way, to Mont, who was pointing this out in our Discord also. It seems like we're very aware of the Dragon's impact on objective bounties now. And we're just like letting Dragons be even or us be one behind. And I think that was so critical in the EG game, because it's EG. They're going to have a fight in the mid game where suddenly it's like, oh, they turned the fight. They got a kill or two on you. And then they're going to like turn around and suddenly the game might shift. Right.
Right.
So if they do that with objective bounties up and they go like rip things apart,
suddenly
they have a gold lead and are running down your mid lane, taking your inhib and still getting objective bounties. We've seen that happen before with EG, right? So I don't know. To me, it feels like this is something that our staff is like, yeah, no, we understand this. Like, and we're going to control that situation, which is really nice.
Really good point.
It's like, yeah, let's get a gold lead, but not create that opportunity for it not to matter,
Right.
And so it's something I'm going to be watching as we go on. Because I noticed, we also, against EG, we didn't get either Rift Herald. We prevented them from getting the first one, from picking up the eye, but we didn't get the second one either. So, I'm just going to keep my eye on that sort of thing. But it feels like intentional. Let's control that situation. And that's very, very good.
Yeah. Honestly, I that's a really interesting point. I hadn't thought about that. It does almost feel like the ideal situation to be in is one where you have the ability to win fights in a straight up 5v5. Obviously, in this game we did. And there's not the threat of a Dragon Soul to potentially turn things completely upside down. So I even feel like if you get a dragon early, and I think ideally you can get two, Because then if it's 2 dragons to 2 dragons, I think it may have been in this game if I'm remembering right. It's like the soul is such a late game potential. There's a good chance that if you're actually beating a team, it doesn't. There's not even a fight for soul, right? It just completely neutralizes it. So that's kind of an interesting way to think about it.
As long as you stall it, right?
Yeah.
Keep it even.
I mean, if they can get their 3rd dragon at, I don't actually know what the timer is, but it feels like pre 20 minutes, then they have a chance to, even if they're down a few thousand gold, just really come storming back.
Yeah. So maybe when you see us sacking dragons at times when it feels weird, there may be something to it. Maybe if we're ahead, we don't want to give that opportunity to them. Maybe when we're behind, we want the opportunity to get the gold. Right. So that's an interesting thing to kind of keep an eye on going forward.
We got the source code on the algorithm. We cracked it, Cole. We got it in the database. Yep.
So long and the short of it is huge win against the top team, the favorite of NA and the favorite in NA. Mm-hmm. And in such like a dominating fashion that, I don't know, I just feel so satisfied, right? I just feel so satisfied by the way that game played out. And I wasn't, until Saturday, I wasn't really expecting that to be the case. So I think that puts us in a great position going forward. Do you have anything else you want to say about the game before?
No.
Okay. So we already talked about Abbedagge's laning really quick. I was actually looking it up. I was trying to paint a picture of the laning stats, but I think it's one of those situations where you would actually have to snapshot, like in the games, that when the tower goes down, what's the CS situation, and what's CS at 20 and everything. Because by the end of the games, he's fighting enough that whatever. But I just know that I'm taking notes like in every game about his CSing and about how high it is. Typically, he has gone from being one of the worst CSers statistically to being like the second best. Now
that's crazy.
His statistical categories, I don't think they reflect where he's really playing right now. Like, how like sometimes dads don't tell the full story. It's a truism, right? And it still feels that way a bit for him, but he certainly has improved in statistical columns, especially with like KDA. So he's not quite like, I think it's like Bjergsen and Takui who are leading by like healthy margins or whatever, but Bjergsen, how that dude plays. Doesn't even care. Kudos to Takui, he's popping off. But I think we can put that to bed, hopefully. I tweeted to Azael after he commented on the 100 Thieves win. I tweeted to him, I hope you guys will talk about on the dive the turnaround in Abbedagge's lane phase. And he said they will. So we can look forward to this on the dive, or they'll change their minds and just talk about TSM. Who knows? But I am very curious to hear what they say. To me, eye test wise, very happy with how he's playing right now.
Yeah.
Let's
let's
just call it that. Can we please now not have to have that conversation next week, the week after? Can we all just agree as fans we don't need to replace Abbedagge?
I'm so glad, Cole. I just heard back from the fans and they agree. They agree with you.
Okay, good.
It's good news.
So speaking about hearing from the fans, I did see, I actually went on Reddit for the first time in a really long time, and I saw someone who like made an apology post. It was like apologizing. I think it may have been for LA Thieves and not for LCS, but just in general, it was just interesting to see like, oh, like this person's like, you know what? We got it wrong. Yeah, it was about LA Thieves because they were talking about JCap. It's like, we got it wrong. I'm sorry. And I was like, wow, imagine if we could just always do that.
It's
like that meme with like, the world if we, blank, blank. It's exactly, like that. That's what I was feeling like. Good vibes there. Maybe we can do that for the LCS team in Abbedagge. Okay. Let's talk about the desk segment for closer. Right? Yeah. Or I guess it should be the League Lounge segment, right? Now, this was really good. Closer, is the emotional leader and heart of the team for us. I feel like he says the things we want to say as fans also. He came out firing on the desk. He has been listening to JLXP. And they come to I don't even know how it came up, right? But they ask him whatever they ask him, and he brings up the power rankings, and he straight up says, "You guys always put us too low." He's like, he like emphasized, like, I'm talking about you. He's like,
yeah, I loved Raz's reaction. Raz actually jumped out of his seat when he said that. It was so good. It was so good.
So true, right? Like, he like that. First of all, what a Chad to do that on the interview. Just straight out call him out, be like, "You guys." I loved it.
Yeah, it was good.
And honestly, it does ring super true, right? Like, feel like most of the power rankings had us somewhere around like 4th place, you know? And on one end, it's kind of like, I understand that we looked very bad in the finals compared to EG, right? Like, EG walked all over us. They took our lunch. We basically didn't even show up. And that's a problem, right? It's just like, you know me, I'm a dedicated LeBron fan. There's no answer. There's no excuse for his series against the Mavericks, right? When he lost the ring to the Mavericks, being the favorite, he played bad. Like, he played poorly, especially when it mattered, right? There's no dancing around that. That's on the record permanently. And that will be on our permanent record as well. The principal will see that at every school we go to.
Yep.
But Jat then asked him a question about their motivation. I think it was like he was talking about, like, do you guys feel there's a playoff switch that you flip? And he said yes, right?
Yeah.
I think we can all acknowledge that, right? We've kind of established that as like, this is how we do things. You know, we ramp up and get ready for playoffs instead of trying to like win every game and try hard every game. There's open experimentation, which, like I said, all the evidence points to that not being an excuse, but an actual reality for our staff and our team, which is great.
Yeah.
Because anytime anyone says that, I'm immediately like 90%, nah, you're BSing. Yeah. But in our case, I believe it. So Jat used that to be like, yeah, see, I'm right. Like, it seems like you guys need to be told, like, you need to have a chip on your shoulder, right? Like, you need to be told you're bad to play well. Raz brought up, I think, connected to this, like, someone, I think it was CLG, was telling, like, after 100 Thieves loss, you never know which 100 Thieves you're going to get. You're going to get the depressed, sad 100 Thieves, or like the obliterate everything.
Yeah.
EF5 100 Thieves, right?
Yeah.
And I just don't, I wanted to get your thoughts, your reaction to this about motivation and stuff. And like, and Closer said, like, they're a cocky team, right? And so they take it personally when people say things like that. How are you feeling about this theory and this framing of the conversation? Do you think it tells the truth? Or, you know, like where do you land on this?
I like to so let's do I don't know. It's like, we want to do a thought experiment. We lose games. We're sub 500. People aren't really talking about us as they aren't now. Like, I think, honestly, I think if we were around 500 or a bit below that, it'd be a pretty similar, you know, arc, the narrative arc, so far as the conversation goes.
They'd still be leading the podcast with TSM.
Yeah, naturally. Are we to believe that because people aren't saying 100 Thieves really underperforming, need to pick it up, these guys can't play, we would just continue to not play well? So it feels too simple to me that, like, they're like, is there a team meeting they have where they're like, guys, it finally happened. They said we're bad.
Papa Smithy comes in with it. He pins it on the cork board.
Right. Like, it just feels, one, way too convenient. It feels too derivative. Like, I I choose to believe much more that we just it's like a baseball season. Like, you're gonna tell me that every game they go out and they're like, you think that, like, before the game, like, guys, if we don't win this game, you're benched, I'm quitting, and he is gonna be sent to the minors. Like, it's just no. So I think to a certain degree, like, league is a long season. You don't play nearly as many games as baseball, granted. Um, but like, these guys have been playing professional league pretty much nonstop for a few years now. So I'm sure that there are weekends that are like, let's see what we can do. Let's try some things and try to get a win. But I like where we're at. So I'd like you to not freak out if things don't go super well. Like, and I'm sure it's not exactly that message. It feels much more likely to me that that is the message. We're looking at the bigger arc here over time versus it finally happened, you guys. We can activate goblin mode because they dared to slander us on the desk. Let's do it. Let's bring our A game. It just feels too simple to me. I don't know.
And to be fair, a little motivation never hurts, right? Like, if someone says something to you right before you play them, okay, yes, like, that may give you like a little extra juice for the game. But we've talked about, like, just to make even more sports analysis or analogies, is like the old way of like managing like an NBA team versus like the new way, right? Where it's like in the old school days, it's like everybody plays like as many minutes in the game as they can, and you go out and you try and win every game, right? Yeah. And you try and get that top seed because home court is going to carry you through the playoffs, right? And you got to be used to playing in peak performance and doing that all the time. Versus the new way, which is like, hey, we're going to strategically rest players and sit them for games. We're going to not worry too much about seeding as long as we're in the 4 to 6 range. We're feeling pretty comfortable. Let's just make sure we have what we need when it's time to really go. Right? That's how NBA teams are really managed nowadays. So I don't know. It just and remember last split when it was like problems early. And they came out, I think Papa Smithy came out and said the players wanted a little bit of a breather. We kind of backed off on their schedule a bit. We saw our results not being exactly what we wanted, so we reined that in a bit and came to a compromise with them. So it's like they're giving them like some leash. They're pulling it back in when it's, time to get serious. It just seems like a more modern approach to handling these things. Now, some fans, many fans probably, including someone who's having this extensive argument with me in the YouTube comments of Jazz podcast, seem to think that like the goal is like to go out and finish the split 18-0.
Yeah,
which would be cool if it happens. Awesome.
How could it?
I'm not saying don't try to win, right?
Why would you goal for anything less?
Yeah, exactly. But that just isn't really a reality for most of the top teams. And even when we see teams do really well, as I pointed out, like for a full split, like, if you optimize for your regular season record, there may be some disadvantages that go with that. Like going into the playoffs, there may be some negative trade-offs. And it sure seems like having finishing the split 17-1 is not a slam dunk for you're going to win LCS finals. It just doesn't seem that way.
Yeah.
So all that to say, I don't think like Jat's take on this is wrong necessarily, or what Closer said is wrong, but I just think it's just like, it's too, like you boil it down too much. You dilute it. It paints too simple of a picture. It's not actually what's going on. Right.
Yeah. I agree. Yep.
So then, actually, I don't know if this was before or after that question, but just another point that Closer made in this brief but very effective appearance was that he said, when we play well, you guys don't know what to say. You just say, for whatever reason, they're playing well now, but they're going to suck again. It's like, right. And I like that hit me too.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like maybe maybe it's just easier and simpler to not like think about the full picture sometimes, just be like, hey, painting with a wider brush is easier to compartmentalize all the teams, and like this team is this team is that, right? TL is like the play standard scale 8 team. 100 Thieves is the turret dive team, right? Like it's easy to compartmentalize things like this. And maybe, just maybe, that means you're not doing the work to track the team closely enough,
right,
to have that full picture.
Yeah.
And it's, I think like that naturally happens, right? There's always like a standard like view of a specific franchise or team. Again, for like the 4th time, back to the NBA, it's like Miami Heat culture, right? Like the Heat culture, where it's like, oh, they're the hardest workers and like, you know, the lunch pail guys, and they're gonna, you know, they're always going to be contenders. Even they're going to be scrappy and whatever. Like, you know, the culture of expecting excellence and all this stuff, right? And it's like, yeah, but those narratives need to shift every once in a while. Every couple of seasons, you need to take a look back and be like, okay, what's actually going on with this team? And I, for whatever reason, it just feels like the narrative and analysis around 100 Thieves seems to be like, for lack of a better word, lazy. It just seems to be not all the way there. It's not, I don't think that the true picture of the team is getting painted very often anymore.
Yeah. I think the result is you get people feeling like we're a coin flippy team, right? Like, who knows? Maybe they're good, maybe they're bad. You just never know. And I kind of feel like, if you look at the arc of the team over time, the rhythms of the team, when we tend to spike, when we tend to not play as well, like I feel like there are some patterns here. So is it a big deal? No, it's not a big deal. Like, it doesn't really matter. I mean, personally lately, I've felt a lot. I think this is what happens, right? If anything, the thing I'm disappointed in is I think the outcome is people just don't really talk about 100 Thieves, because it boils down to, did they win last week? I guess they're a good team now. Did they lose last week? I guess they're pretty bad. It's just like, I mean, can we please get at least a 2-week average conversation? That's you know, is that too much? And it kind of comes back, like, a big part of the reason we started doing this is because I would watch this amazing weekend of games. Very exciting. We just beat the #1 team in the league. It was a rematch. We got them. We're going into summer playoffs. This feels like it's a deal, some kind of deal, you know, medium to large deal. Everyone thought they couldn't be beat. Here we are. It's time. We're getting excited. Maybe we're going back to Worlds. And it's like 80 seconds is what we're going to give you. 80 seconds to really soak in this. And then we're going to start talking about the next. So it's like, that's the reason we started doing this, basically. So surely there is another thing or two you could say about what's happening here.
Yeah.
And I guess, look, clearly we're in the minority on this, because we, you know, like, we don't have a comparable audience.
Yeah. No one
like
cares that we're here.
Yes.
Right.
But I just can't move on past the idea that, like, there is more that's worth talking about. And I do think that when you boil it down to, like, I mean, I guess they'll play mad and they're kind of coin flippy. It's like, well, that I don't really know. You didn't give me much to work with here. There's not a lead that I can pick up into the next segment on that note. So I see that, and I just feel like I think we're missing an opportunity. And that's kind of, I think that'd be a great way to build over time more interest and excitement in the teams who are in the LCS, right? Is let's talk about these things. It's something larger scale than what we're currently getting.
Right. And a few people are saying in the chat, it's like, well, there's like less heist content, less videos like coming out 100 Thieves and stuff. So it's like, what's driving the narrative? And it's like, guess what? You know, like 5th time NBA teams aren't putting out their weekly like docu-series that set the talking points for the week. Yeah. I know we're not the same thing. I know esports is not traditional sports. I know it's not the same thing. But at the same time, if your job is to present the narrative of the teams in the league, sometimes you have to be active about how you do that. You have to proactively collect information and talk to people, have conversations on and off the record. Get that content, right? Get those narratives out instead of waiting for someone to get them out to you. And that's what it seems like is kind of happening. If people want to make that argument, it's like, well, and honestly, I don't think the people that are saying that in chat are necessarily wrong, because I do think there probably is a correlation between like the content that we put out as an org and how much our narrative and our story gets told, right? I think like that's probably true. Mm-hmm. They did talk about us a lot more when the heist was like regular and very like robust. Okay, but that doesn't change like you got to be proactive with it, right? So maybe that's like kind of a change that needs to happen in the scene. But then again, maybe it's not worth their time.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not what the fans want. Maybe the fans just want TSM every week. Who knows?
Honestly,
certainly not us.
It would
yeah. Certainly not us. Okay. I didn't mean to be so critical about these guys, by the way. I just want to be on the record, as I have been in the past. I really like the LCS broadcast staff and the analysts and everything. I like them a lot. In fact, they are one of the reasons why I was interested in LCS when you, Jordan, first got me to watch it. I couldn't believe how professional they were, you know, and I think they do a good job. The casters are good, the analysts are good, you know, whatever. But yeah, some room to grow, I think. Definitely some room to grow, especially after spending some time doing what we do and seeing that, yeah, we just don't seem to have that much proactivity out of them.
Yeah, it feels like, it does feel like there are a couple of template narratives which are easy to maintain. TSM, historically good, now bad. We got to talk about that, figure it out. And I get it. Like that is a compelling narrative. That's an interesting one. We talked about this when we had our Podpalooza. It is interesting to watch TSM right now because it's like, how are they going to get out of this hole that they're in? That's a story that it's easy to maintain interest in. And when they lose, you're like, oh boy, the hole continues to go deeper. We have not found the bottom yet. What next? What will we see next? You know, what crazy tweet is going to come out next that you feel could go in the Hall of Fame of bad tweets, right? Like I get it. That's interesting. And I think that people don't really have a sense of how to talk about a static. I see a Max in chat reminding us is a long-standing LCS roster. That's not normal. A static and variable performance over time team. There is no template for that. How do you make that as interesting as like a house that's on fire? It's not going to sell as many copies of the newspaper, right? Like I get it. But I think that the risk here is that static and variable performing team who has potentially found the way to reliably spike at the right time of the year, finals back to back. If we make it again, I think we got to acknowledge here, we need to figure out how to tell the story of this team, because it's actually a very interesting one, right? And it's an exciting team to watch. If you don't just say good this week, bad next week, I guess we'll check back in at finals. It's like, or you could just check in and stay tuned in and figure out how to talk about this group, because they're a good team. They were, they are, and I think they will be. And it feels a little bit like we're missing the story because TSM continues to just be on fire. And look, if you want to build long-term viewership, TSM can only burn so long before they burn out.
Yeah.
Right. Like there won't be much to talk about when it's like, I guess it's another new crop of like academy talent that they've scraped up, and they got another expensive import. It's like, yeah, okay, you know, maybe this time it'll be different. Who knows?
Before someday sends him back. Okay.
Yeah, right. It's just not that interesting for long. So we got to be careful here that we don't binge on these, you know, FTX brand potato chips because that's not going to do you for a long time. You gotta get a good healthy diet of 100 Thieves, quality League of Legends. And so concludes my rant.
Nicely done, sir. Okay, let's move on to listener takes. A lot of these we probably will have already kind of talked about along the way. And I apologize because I am trying to do a better job of like weaving the takes in as we go when we're talking about that thing. So if we kind of like hit your take super quick or gloss over it here because we've talked about it earlier in the pod, I'm sorry. And I will try to be better about that in the future, but let's run through these and see what we got. Our friend from the Podpalooza, Thomas from Gamehouse and Talking TSM said, would you agree that 100T lives or dies by Abbedagge's performance?
Darkhuth will remind us that having a good mid laner is important. So I think to a certain degree, it's like, yeah, hard to be good if you have no spine on the map, if you're just collapsing in. I mean, I think certainly that over time, this roster feels like it is the steadiest in non-mid lane positions. And that's honestly, it's true for the entire history of the org. This roster is different because we've had the highest performances in mid as we have from any other iteration of the roster. And those highs have resulted in us winning a title, right? So it's like that's domestically, you can't get higher than that. So do we live or die? I think it's probably like close to oversimplification, but I don't think it's wrong. You know, I think that does seem to be the way it goes for us.
I think like if you look at the context of this is like winning the title, then it's probably true. But I think when it comes to just like winning week to week, I don't think so, because we've had bad performances from him at different times where we've won. We've had bad performances from him at times where we've lost. And we have a strong enough set of talents that we can kind of rotate who's carrying when we're at our best, at least. So when it comes to the title, I would agree. But just in general, working towards playoffs, I would disagree, actually. I think like we have enough talent to work around it for the most part. Though certainly you want your mid laner performing at his ceiling. So
yeah.
JC101 says Tabasco take. Oh, and I wanted to talk about this. Yes, I wanted to bring this up. JC101 says Tabasco take, bringing out Evil Genius's Danny, EG Danny, is going to be the new meta to defeating EG. Banning out him. Yeah. It's going to be the new meta to beating EG. And it's 100T once again showing other teams how to beat the quote best teams. And I love this.
Yeah.
I love this thought where it's like, hey, do you know what one of the things we do is we solve the like good teams. And so if they, if they want to go far in the playoffs, they have to like, counter our solution of their team. Seems to kind of hold up as of late. The bans in this game, by the way, first round Philios, also in the bot lane, first round was Yumi and Braum in the second. So only one ban. I'm sorry, I was reading EG's bans. Let me back up. Sorry about that.
Makes more sense.
I was going to say, I felt like there were more when I was originally thinking about this. So that's good. From 100 Thieves, Seraphine was banned out. Tom Kench support, right? Silas in mid. That was the first 3 bans. And then we had Jinx Misfortune. So yeah, we did toss, 4 bans in the bot lane's direction. Danny, there were 1 or 2 times where it seemed like Danny might do Danny things in this game.
Yeah.
And he didn't really get a chance to. And he still ended up with, like I said, a pick that's emerging as like one of the power picks for bot lane in Kai'Sa. Now, maybe not necessarily in LCS yet, but in some other regions. So probably true. But isn't it interesting? It's like we can focus on one of the strengths again, just like we did against Summit, right?
Yeah.
And kind of eliminate it from contention. I mean, no one could do anything from EG. Like, I kind of like this take. I like the idea of the take. I'm not sure 100% how true it is. I like it. I think it's kind of true, and I want it to be 100% true.
I mean, I feel like you got to at least think about the idea that we're giant killers, like Summit See, having a C9 twice. I'm sorry, C9.
Yeah, I did have
but
the
then
C9
also-
twice. Alfari in Team Liquid.
Yeah. Yep. Do we so much have the direct hand in that? I can't remember. I guess that was more like the final, that we were the final nail in the coffin on
Yeah.
that. Anyhow, yeah, I think it is. It's interesting. What it might do is it might force them to raise Danny in priority, but then it opens up for more counter picks. So, like if that game probably goes differently if they pick Danny in the first 3. I have to imagine, just because it's getting the MF and the Jinx, I think it was, right, in the second round. That's huge, narrowing of his pool.
Yep.
So yeah, good move.
Very good. Like it. Crockpot says this weekend, and more importantly, the EG game is why you should never doubt this team. They can turn it on as easy as flipping a switch and firing on all cylinders. I can't wait to collect number 2 soon. Of course, he's talking about titles. Then go on to dominate worlds, dominate in all caps, worlds, that is, and then says, quote me. So, Crockpot, very passionate believer in the potential of 100 Thieves, which we commend. How far are you riding with Crockpot on this take?
One step at a time. I mean, I gotta say, if we make it back to Worlds, I have to imagine we'll do better. So if we can get there, I would start with the assumption that we are, assuming that we get there in a good shape. I would like our chances to get out of groups, assuming that we're playing at the top of our game, which is kind of what he's saying is, flip the switch, and we are. So yeah, I won't say we're going to dominate Worlds, but I think we can show up and have a strong showing for sure.
Yeah, I think as far as collecting the LCS title number 2, I think that it's certainly, like, no one's going to dispute whether it's possible. It's definitely possible. And I said last week that I think that we can provide a real reckoning for EG in the playoffs. So I'm good with that. I'm good with a LCS title prediction, and I'm open to the possibility of getting out of groups in Worlds. Depends on our draw, a lot. Probably will depend on our seeding coming out of it. Yeah, we have had the 2 times we've gone to Worlds, we had very bad draw both times. So, but we did beat, we absolutely picked apart the world champion in a game that had not a ton of meaning to it, but had meaning and implication to them. So, there is that. I'm not going to ride as far as dominate Worlds with Crockpot, but I am gonna tip the hat to Crockpot for the genuine passion and belief in this team. And by the way, looks like Ultra Chad genius if he's right. So take your shots.
Quote him on that.
Take your shots. Okay. Sen says this split, the split, like in general, the split is for limit testing. As long as we make playoffs and get to the summer finals and Worlds, I don't care if we win the regular split games. However, very satisfying to rip into EG and to win. And I think we're both totally like, yeah.
Yes. I like that. I think that's a credit to Sen for continuing to hit that line, right? Limit testing and trying things for sure.
Sen super consistent. A Max Legit says, with 7 games left this split, I predict that 100T will finish with their best split win percentage in franchise history. To do so, they need to win 5 more games, surpassing their previous record of 66 points, or 2/3 of their game, right? So spring of 2018, we were 12-6. Summer of 21, we were 18-9. Spring of this year, 12-6. So 7 games left. We need to win 5 of them. Seems possible, right?
Seems possible. We've already got EG out of the way for the second round robin.
Seems likely, even. Dare I say?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
5 out of 7.
I mean, again, I don't think we're gonna overchase this. I
don't think we're gonna go hard, and I bet one of those losses is gonna be against a doo-doo team. But I think, in fact, I think 5 and 7 is probably the exact record that will go.
5 of 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
5 of 7. Yeah, not 5 and 7.
That's a lot more games than I thought we had left, but sure. Okay.
Yeah, we'll look forward to the schedule for next week in a little bit. Connor I says, I think 100T clearly has the highest ceiling of any team in the LCS. When things click, 100T is unbeatable and have a real opportunity to make an impact at Worlds. We saw that last year, beating the eventual world champs EDG. The real issue is when we run it down. Sometimes we really run it down. If we get hot in playoffs again or get hot in Worlds, we by far have the best chance of doing damage for NA, in my opinion.
Yeah. Who wants a hot 100 Thieves in their group, in their playoff bracket? It all does come down to that. I mean, look, I think that is the thing. Let's not mince our words. That is the thing that will determine the long term, like the legacy of this team. Is this team a one and done? They just couldn't find a way to bring it back consistently, or are they going to continue to win things? And that's the puzzle for them to solve. Can they find a way to peak at the right time? And the tricky thing is, can you peak at the right time, win the LCS? Can you then peak at the right time again and play well at Worlds? Like, that's a really tough thing to do.
You drop those games against GRX or whatever, and then
yeah, exactly,
and then beat T1 and EDG, right? Yeah,
right.
We'll see. I'll say the only thing, I do think EG, when they play super well, they also have a very high ceiling. We saw that. I probably said it earlier, but when they played in spring finals, it seemed to be like the exact right moment for them, lightning in a bottle, right? Hard to picture anybody beating them at that point. So they have a super high ceiling as well. So I think, assuming they can click in that real way, and assuming that they made it all the way through the growing pains of being at Worlds, or being at MSI, I should say, yeah, they could probably do damage for NA as well. So I will say this: I don't think both of our teams are going to do it at the same time. I think it'll be one of us.
Ooh, that would be a series, though, boy, if it did happen. That would be fun to watch.
That would be.
Whew.
Bamatide says, pretty good to see this week. Still unsure as to why it takes so long to put Abbedagge on comfort. A full damage comp is easily a good decision and should continue to be played. Clearly, we saw the benefits of that comp in the EG game. So hard to disagree with that. Though I will say, we've seen some very good games out of 100 Thieves when Abbedagge has been on either a roam setup champ or like a more supportive, right? So we have had those games. So I can kind of see why it takes a while to figure it out, especially if performance is variable, right? Like if there's some variance in the performance, it's like, okay, we're not sure when we're clicking on what and what's the right thing for him to play at the moment. But I do have trust that we'll get there in the end.
Yeah.
Anything else on that?
I'll just add, it's, I have to imagine a comp like this doesn't come along that often. Like it feels a little bit to me like EG fell asleep at the draft wheel, and then when they woke up, they were driving head first into full damage comp. And they're like, oh no, we've made a mistake here. So, I don't know if we should expect to be able to reliably pull this kind of thing. But yeah, if we can, absolutely. That's a good looking comp.
Curly from Flight Check says the current meta favors a mid and top focus, and Abbedagge has returned to form at the perfect time. Do you think he's found his rhythm, or has 100T shifted towards enabling him? So, and he gives us examples of that: more ganks, giving playmaking champs, etc.
I think there are a lot of oopsies that we saw from Abbedagge where it's just, honestly, it's just misplays. It was like being caught out, bad positioning. Now he has been hard camped in some games too.
Yes, very often.
Yeah. So I don't think it's all his, but even mid to late game, I think it was when he was having his hardest time. I think there were a fair number of those where it's like, it feels to me like that's a lot tighter, which is so good to see. And when you play the game tighter, or when you're able to push your advantage in lane and really punish your opponent, it makes it so much easier to play around you. So I think it's probably a little bit of a both and. We have given the team the opportunity to actually play through mid and not just try to keep mid from falling apart, right? Which feels like an important difference.
It's weird for me because I don't feel like we typically like try and play through the mid lane. I think there have been times like this Azir game where we have played through the mid laner later on, but it never feels like our focus is on slamming and getting that mid tier 1 tower down as soon as we can and whatever. It doesn't seem like we play that way. That's why I was so surprised when I brought up that first blood stat for Abbedagge, how he has like the most by any mid laner by a lot. That was really like surprising to me. So maybe I've got the wrong read on it, but it does seem like when we've been thinking about our strategy, that more often we choose to carry in other ways. Like it's like Closer is like really helping someday, or he's visiting bot a lot, or maybe Closer himself is the carry or whatever. It seems to be more consistent in that way. And I think that maybe some of like the more ganks and attention from Closer that Abbedagge has seemingly got, which I'm not, I would need to really like see the stats and the analysis on that to see if that's really the case, but it seems reasonable and plausible. That may be reactionary to the fact that Abbedagge, like the strat from other teams, is apparently to camp Abbedagge. So that may just be reaction to that. I don't know. It's a good question. I'm not totally sure on that. Okay, 2 more. And you're going to have to forgive me because I don't know how to pronounce your last name. David Chasnuk, maybe? Chasnuk, SJAZNUK, says LCS expands to 20 teams. Similar to the NHL, each team can only protect 2 players.
Whoa.
Who do you protect from 100T?
Yo, that's a good question. I mean, I think you've got to protect. Oh, it's so hard to say.
Isn't it? Right. It's like harder than you think. I've got my opinion though.
Okay. I'll go. I'm not going to take all the time. I'll go Closer because I think he is the heart and
number
soul,
1 pick. Yep.
Playoff Closer is real thing. And this is the question, Cole. It's FBI or it's Abbedagge. And I got to say, I think about Abbedagge because we've seen how painful it is to not have a reliable option in mid. And I think FBI is just somebody who can fault you. I'll lean close. I'll go Abbedagge. I'll give an answer. I'll say Abbedagge for right now. If this is for next season, I'm going Abbedagge. I'm going with it.
I actually came down with the exact same picks as you.
Yes.
I also think Abbedagge. Closer for sure. I can be persuaded on the others, but I think Abbedagge, mid lane's really hard to get right. And people are talking about FBI and who he has like a duo, keep the duo together. Well, mid and jungle is a duo as well. And, those are import players, the hard to acquire, hard to get right positions. We're 3 deep in the top lane, basically. Even though I love all the guys, and I don't want to see any of the guys go, right? But I think I'll take mid jungle. All right, and then final question. It's also a good one from Nick Moore. And maybe we'll need some time with this, but what are your top 3 to 5 moments from 100T's 100 regular season victories? So as pointed out by Amax Legit, this win over EG was our 100th regular season win in franchise history. So not including playoffs. So top 3 to 5 moments from those victories. Do you want me to go first? I'll stall for you to waste the time, though I may say ones that are going to be yours.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't really have a prepared answer, but I kind of like, so let me go. This is loosely like 3 to 1, not 1 to 3, right?
Okay.
I remember the contracts running in on Olaf with the karma buff against C9 and pastry time saying it's so stupid when we were in the middle of dismantling C9 when they were seen as invincible and we just totally like pulled them apart. That was so good to me. That was
100T pre-CLG before we shipped them Poom, Luger contracts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And then I'm going to say this is just feeling, so don't hold me to this, right? But I'm going to say number 2, I might put the Abbedagge quadra kill from this past weekend because stakes were ultra high against EG. So it's like, for me, like I lean towards these big wins against EG, C9, or Team Liquid, right? Who cares about TSM? So I think that might be up there. That was insane.
Yep.
Oh gosh, Crockpot brought up one that I should probably toss in there as maybe this is number 2. So maybe we'll bump mine down, and the one I just said goes into 3. The Huhi Lissandra flank to win against, was it Clutch? I think
that was one of mine for sure.
In number 2, and then the first one, number 1, has got to be the someday 1v2 under turret that we were there in person for.
Yes, dude. Yeah.
The Urgot play against Huni and whoever the jungler was.
Yeah.
That was so disgusting. And we were there for it, and you can hear my voice on the broadcast in the crowd going nuts about that play. I could not believe it. It's one of my favorites of all time. Anyway, that's just off the top of my head. You go.
I'm gonna go.
And by the way, AJ Bex pointed out his base save, Sunday's base save, as I'm assuming he's talking about Jack's Clutch Gaming. I think that was playoffs. Wasn't that playoffs?
I don't know.
That's the reason I'm not saying that. So if that wasn't a playoffs game, then put it in there.
I think what we've learned from this exercise, which is great, Nick, thank you for sending this through.
I know, right? It's perfect.
It's hard to pick. It's really hard to pick. I will give you the 3 that come to mind for me first. One of them is the Huhi flank. It was just such a beautiful, perfect setup. I'm going to add a couple more to the list. One for me, and this might come as a surprise, it's the Ryu game where he was playing Akali, and he had multiple, just
against CLG in the base,
the thinnest of all possible margins. It was like the game was over, we had lost, and suddenly Ryu gets 2 kills. And it's like, oh, they've only got 3 people now. They can't end. So it just those were unbelievable to me. And that was early Thieves. I love that. And I think that for me, I gotta go with the someday Lucian winning
the game by himself.
Golden Guardians. I think it was Golden Guardians, where he was playing a different video game entirely, and it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair, and the game ended, and it was because of someday.
Okay, let me make a note. So it appears, I was kind of pulling this up because you guys may or may not know this, but we make a top plays of every season video and we put it on our channel. So I went to the 2018 top plays to see number 1, which is the Someday Jax defense against Clutch. It does appear that was a regular season one.
Wow.
So that it looks like it was week 3 of one of the splits.
Freaking huge.
Someday is freaking huge is the call out. So I put the link to our 2018 one in there in case you want to relive that. The 2019 video, you might want to, that one's not quite as interesting, to be honest, even though the play I mentioned, the 1v2 under turret, is in that one. And then we have 2020 and 2021 on our channel as well. So go and enjoy those.
Should we link those in the pod description or something, or the YouTube? I don't know if it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm tossing them out in chat too for those who are caring about this. But
if you didn't know, this is a fun thing we do.
We are very much into debating what the best plays are and everything. That is right up our alley. So we really love the question from Nick. And let me pull up the 2021 video as well before we move on to make predictions. Jordan, we are playing what are not seeming to be the strongest teams this upcoming week. Now, we've got... I think Dignitas is the Saturday game. Yeah, Dignitas is the Saturday game. They're 2-9 in 10th place. They lost to C9 and FlyQuest in the past week. What you got?
Beat them.
Anything?
They're just not. They're bottom of the table. Look, I know in the past we had a hard time with Dignitas. We're at the point, Cole, in our arc where I will not pick against us against a lower third of the table team. This is foreshadowing until we lose again. So my predictions will be easy and straightforward from here on out. This is a dub.
I think we got the Dignitas monkey off our back already.
Yeah.
And I think we're comfortable against them again. They don't look particularly threatening, so I'm going to call that a dub as well. The discussion around game 2 is a little more interesting, right? We have Immortals, who are tied in 8th place, sitting at 3-8. They did beat TSM, top of the table team TSM. Oh, wait, my notes were wrong. Also tied for 8th place, TSM.
Yeah.
But at the same time, a lot of people seem to be saying some positive things about Immortals. What are you thinking? Is this trap game weekend for us?
I mean, look, our guy Kenby had a good game for himself. They did a couple of ill-advised moves against an Aatrox, which is to stand all within 1 Q multiple times. Turns out, not a great play against Aatrox. I think we beat them. I think it's fine.
And Silky Milkman in chat,
good name,
calling out that Dignitas is unbeatable and River strikes fear in my heart. I didn't want to gloss over this. River does have like a thing for us. I think River plays it. He shows out against us kind of, but not worried. But anyway, the thing is with the Immortals team, I think it's like the trending pick for like, oh, like maybe they're a little bit better now. Maybe they're improving. Fortunately, we're not the team that has to like be the guinea pig that demonstrates that, right? I think we have a bit of an advance warning, and fortunately, since we don't have a strong team to focus on other than them, you know, because like if we were playing like, hey, if we're playing like C9 or Team Liquid in the same week, well, who knows how strong those teams are. But if we're playing them, maybe I should say FlyQuest, right, Curly? Yeah. If we're playing them, you know, maybe it's a little different because it's like you're focusing on the big team and not preparing for, you know, the weaker and it comes a trap game. But it's like Immortals is the team to prepare for of the two for us this week. So the only way we lose this is if we do something really funky. And I honestly don't think we're going to. I don't think we're going to be caught off guard. I don't think we're going to do anything funky for that game. Maybe Dignitas, but not for that game. So could be wrong there. But I think a 2-0 weekend. I will admit, as Jat pointed out, that actually Jat said, you know, that 100 Thieves is going to lose one of these games this Saturday. He said you can already chalk it. They're going to lose one of these. So the bold prediction from Jat. At the same time, it seems kind of true. This is right around where we tend to lose a weird game. So as much as I want to be like, no, Jat, you're wrong.
Yeah.
He's kind of right. Usually this happens to us.
And if we do, how worried will you be?
I will be exactly as worried as I am right now.
That's right. It was in a constant state of panic. So maximum worry at all times. It makes it easy. You don't have to try to figure out if you should be or not. You just always press the blow it up button if you see it.
Yeah.
Just blow it up.
We're at
start over.
Constant red alert. DEFCON 5 or whatever it is. Constant state of 100 Thieves. DEFCON 1. Yeah. If this is reverse order, who knows? Anyway, so yeah, I think we're heading towards the 2-0 weekend. I sure hope I'm right. But I had a fun time on this podcast with you, my friend.
I did too.
I'm so glad we're friends.
Me too. And I'm glad that we talk about 100 Thieves for an extended amount of time. Sometimes longer than we planned to.
Well, definitely longer than we planned to tonight. This was a long one, but a good one. But a very good one.
But a good one. There's a lot to say.
Yeah.
I'm glad we said it. And I'm glad, chat, you were here with us.
Yeah,
if
thanks.
You're listening and not watching live, consider watching us live. 8:30 p.m. best time zone, Central. And Mondays.
Don't even have to say it. Yeah.
I know.
Well, we'll see you next Monday at this time. We will also most likely see you on Thursday. We haven't firmed plans, but I think we will see you on Thursday as
Signs
well.
Point to yes.
Follow us on Twitter. I'll dump this in chat really quick. Follow us on Twitter to make sure that you are abreast of the situation. And we will see you then and then after a couple of dubs this weekend. So, as always, we will say we love you and we miss you already.